Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Office Bloke Daz.
I'm Gaynor.
Alright, a bit serious stuff now. We've changed a little bit of the background. People are saying it's a little bit too bright if we're going to do true crime.
Yeah.
So we've changed it up a little bit. Let us know what you think. Going to get into a bit of true crime. We do both like it, don't we?
We do.
I was always a wannabe cop.
Yeah.
Still be a cop now if I could.
If you could run fast enough.
I could. Trust me. Don't need to run fast when I've got a taser.
If you didn't have anger management issues.
Well, that's the problem, innit? Yeah. This is JonBenet Ramsey. It's a story that broke when we first moved to the USA.
Yeah, literally within days.
I think it was days when we arrived, just before Christmas. This came about, and I want to say it was on Christmas Day or Boxing Day, Christmas Eve maybe.
We moved there on about the 9th of December.
7th of December.
Right, and it was only a couple of weeks after.
Yeah, straight after it happened. Yeah. So it was big news at the time, I remember, and I don't think it's ever been resolved, has it?
No.
Yeah. So here we go. Anyway, this is a bit of JonBenet Ramsey. What most likely happened? Let's see.
JonBenet Ramsey. What most likely happened? This video delves into the dark secrets of one of America's most perplexing murder cases. Take a step with us into the shadowy world of the JonBenet Ramsey case, a haunting tale that continues to baffle and captivate the world. We peel back the layers of this enigma, exploring the labyrinth of evidence, theories, and unanswered questions, where innocence was shattered and whispers of conspiracy still linger. As we navigate the twists and turns of this perplexing case, we will show you evidence that an intruder may have killed this innocent child. Brace yourself for a disturbing voyage into the labyrinth of the JonBenet Ramsey case, where each revelation reveals yet another layer of chilling mystery. On December 26, 1996,
Boxing Day.
John and Patsy Ramsey reported that their 6-year-old daughter, JonBenet Ramsey, had been kidnapped and that a ransom note demanding $118,000 had been found. A few hours later, she was discovered murdered in her Boulder, Colorado family.
I don't want to stop it so early, but I'm going to, because 118,000 is a random number.
Yeah.
It's not like, it's not 100 grand, not 150. Why it's for 118?
Yeah.
It's kind of a weird sort of like random number that.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is
and even the handwriting, it's just a very weird handwriting.
I remember
It's
the
as
note
though
and all
somebody's
that.
deliberately tried to write with the left hand if the right handed or something like that.
If you see my handwriting, it looks like I wrote with my feet. So.
A few hours later, she was discovered murdered in her Boulder, Colorado family home. JonBenet Ramsey's shocking murder marked the beginning of a decades-long mystery. In the days, weeks, months, and years that followed, authorities and amateur detectives tried to answer just one question. Who murdered the child beauty queen? Had it been a home intruder? Under the media's constant scrutiny, police considered hundreds of possible suspects as the investigation progressed. They investigated the lives of a housekeeper, neighbors, and even pedophiles in other states. JonBenet Ramsey's murder remains unresolved, despite numerous false confessions and clues. On the surface, JonBenet Ramsey's brief existence appeared extravagant. JonBenet, born on August 6, 1990, to John and Patsy Ramsey, spent most of her time competing in and winning children's beauty pageants. JonBenet had won numerous titles by age 6, including America's Royale Miss, Little Miss Colorado, and National Tiny Miss Beauty. She had also posed for several glamour photographs, which many later considered inappropriate for her age. Aside from the pageant work, JonBenet's life was relatively ordinary. She attended High Peaks Elementary School in Boulder, Colorado, while living with her wealthy parents and older brother Burke. On December 25, 1996, she and her family celebrated Christmas. This would be the little girl's last. According to her,
she's kind of a target for kiddie fiddlers, isn't she?
She is, yeah.
With the way she is. And again, when I seen this, I was a little bit... My take on child pageants like that is a little bit... I think it's not needed.
Yeah, it's like
they can do other things without having to dress up like that.
Child actors, not many of them grow up to be normal.
Yeah. It's pushed a lot of pressure pushed on them at such a young age.
Yeah.
And I always wondered with this case as well is that it's a wealthy family, a white wealthy family from a very wealthy neighbourhood, a very nice neighbourhood.
Yeah.
And it gets a lot of it got a lot of the media attention
Publicity.
for what it was. If that was like a mid like a lower class family,
Yeah.
let's say,
Yeah.
would they get the same look, or
Probably-
even a
probably
black
not.
family?
Yeah.
You know, it's one of them where would you get the same coverage? Will you get the same? We had similar over here with Madeleine
Yeah.
McCann.
Yeah.
You know, we went through a similar sort of thing where other families have got missing kids, and it's
Yeah.
just sort of like brushed
Why-
under.
yeah, why is theirs so
why is
special?
theirs? Yeah, exactly, and it's kind of a bit like this
Yeah.
as well. You know, they found the body. You know, I remember the scene got contaminated like numerous times. It was a massive botch job by the Colorado
Yeah.
police, from what I
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah.
Which probably sort of like took away from them finding the killer.
Yeah.
But let's see what goes on.
Her parents, everything appeared to be in order when they put their daughter to bed that night. No one, other than the killer or killers, knows precisely what happened between that night and early dawn the next day. The Ramseys realized something was amiss at 5:30 a.m. when Patsy saw a piece of paper adhered to the staircase. What she had discovered was a 2.5-page ransom note. In the note, the author claimed, "We have your daughter," demanded $118,000 for JonBenet's safe return, and vowed to call with more details by 10 a.m. tomorrow. I just recall...
Also, look, in the ransom note, they're asking for 100 grand
Dollar bills.
and then 20s. Why?
Yeah, probably less traceable. There's more of them in circulation, I'm guessing.
No.
There's more dollar bills and more 20s in circulation. There is if you ask them in, $100 bills, they're probably easy to trace. So you
Or why
want less traceable.
118?
Don't know, it's a weird number.
It's as if somebody's got like a debt or something and they have to pay it.
It's not, I think it's a fake note.
Yeah.
$118,000 for JonBenet's safe return, and vowed to call with more details by 10 a.m. tomorrow. I just recall reading, "We have your daughter," Patsy Ramsey would say later. I just felt an overwhelming anxiety, and I just dashed back up those stairs as fast as I could and pushed her door open. Patsy said that because JonBenet was not in her room, she awoke her husband and dialed 911. "We have a kidnapping," she cried on the phone. "Hurry, please. There's a note left and our daughter's gone." Although police, family and acquaintances searched the residence, no trace of the girl was found. Most officers left after a few hours, leaving Linda Arndt, a detective, to wait with JonBenet's parents.
So much
Arndt, who
coffee,
found
yeah.
it peculiar that neither parent reacted when the hijackers did not contact them by 10 a.m., suggested that John Ramsey conduct a second search of the residence. She told him that he might be able to notice if anything seemed out of place. John then went down to the basement, which the police had not yet searched. John discovered JonBenet's body there. She had been savagely beaten over the head, strangled with a nylon cord, and one of her mother's paintbrushes, and possibly violated. "I knew instantly what I found. I found my daughter," John Ramsey later said. "She was lying on a white blanket. The blanket was wrapped around her. Her hands were tied above her head. She had tape over her mouth." After the gruesome discovery, the Boulder Police Department made numerous mistakes that compromised the investigation, including allowing JonBenet's father to move the body and not conducting separate interviews with the parents. Even before the body was discovered, the police allowed multiple visitors into the residence, contaminating the crime scene. Some visitors had even cleaned the house, possibly removing any traces that had been left of the possible murderer. It is believed that the failure of the police to adequately secure the entire crime scene is one of the primary reasons why the case has been so challenging to solve. A subsequent post-mortem depicted a dismal picture of JonBenet's death. The 6-year-old's cause of death was asphyxia by strangulation with associated craniocerebral trauma. In other words, she had been severely struck in the head and strangled. It did not take long for John and Patsy Ramsey to become suspects. Considering that JonBenet's body was discovered in her family residence, it is probable that a close relative was responsible for her death. Her mother and father were also suspiciously quick in securing legal representation. Early investigations did indeed appear to circle back to the Ramsey residence. The garroted rope used to kill JonBenet, one of Patsy's paintbrushes was used to create it. The type of paper that was used for the ransom note, it had been removed from an existing notepad in the residence. The pen used, also present in the home. Even the contents of the ransom note appeared questionable. First, it was extremely long, while ransom notes are typically brief. In addition, the author wanted an exact sum of money, $118,000. That was the precise quantity of bonus money John Ramsey received that year. The police quickly began to view John and Patsy Ramsey as their leading suspects. The theory was that they accidentally murdered JonBenet and then staged the crime scene to make it appear as though she was murdered by an intruder. Meanwhile, JonBenet's parents denied the allegations vehemently. However, as the investigation dragged on, some detectives began to examine alternative options. Initially, Lou Smith, a retired Colorado detective, called out of retirement to help with the investigation, suspected the parents. However, the more he investigated, the more he questioned their culpability. Instead, Smith believed that the intruder had entered through one of the home's many open windows, specifically the basement window, using evidence such as an
Well, one thing that sort of like sticks out to me there when he says that with like open windows in the house, it's Boulder, Colorado, December 26th. Now I'm not sure on the weather in Boulder, Colorado, but I know Colorado's quite a cold state,
yeah.
In the winter, or it can be.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I'm just relating that to ski resorts and what I know about Denver and things like that, which is totally different places I get. But to me, it'd be like, would you have the windows open in December?
I'm wondering
in
if you mean
Boulder?
unlocked.
It meant unlocked, you
Yeah,
mean, right,
I
as
think
opposed to
like-
open.
yeah.
Right. Possibly. But it just all seems a little bit weird.
It's a very, very strange story.
It's a strange case that has massive reflections on the Madeleine McCann.
Yeah.
Very similar sort of like circumstance, isn't it?
Yeah.
familiar shoe impression near the crime scene and a potential stun gun imprint on JonBenet's body, he argued that this unknown individual was the murderer of JonBenet Ramsey. However, most Boulder police officers prioritized JonBenet's parents as suspects. Smith eventually quit the case out of frustration. "I cannot in good conscience be a part of the persecution of innocent people," Smith stated. "It would be highly improper and unethical for me to stay when I so strongly believe this." But perhaps the most startling theory is that Burke, JonBenet's brother, who was only 9 years old at the time, was guilty of JonBenet's murder. This theory gathered momentum following the 2016 CBS documentary series, The Case of JonBenet Ramsey. According to the documentary, JonBenet's intestines contained undigested pineapple, and a tray of pineapple was discovered in the kitchen. However, Patsy denied having prepared pineapple for JonBenet. Burke prepared the pineapple as a midnight snack, according to the controversial theory. However, when JonBenet took a piece, Burke allegedly struck her on the head with an object, possibly a flashlight. Assuming JonBenet was dead, their parents orchestrated her murder scene. In response to the series, Burke Ramsey sued CBS for $750 million, but the case was resolved out of court. If the parents or her brother did not murder JonBenet Ramsey, then who did? Unless the family murderer theory can be conclusively proved, the most likely theory is that of a home intruder. See if you agree with our supporting evidence that an intruder killed JonBenet, and leave us a comment in the comment section below. Watch till the end when one of the world's most famous profilers weighs in on the case. Reason 1. The existence of evidence that JonBenet had been sexually violated is one of the most substantial clues that this was an intruder crime, as it is uncommon for a husband and wife to conspire to cover up abuse committed by only one of them. This evidence is equivocal, and it is unclear whether or not she has ever been sexually abused. There was no evidence of sperm, and the official conclusion is that sexual assault cannot be ruled out. Reason 2. If the parents were compelled to murder their daughter to cover up their son's attack, garroting would not be the method of choice. It is too slow, intimate, and inhumane. Reason 3. The bloodstain on JonBenet's undergarments contained DNA from 2 individuals who were not in the Ramsey family. Reason 4. Police discovered an unlocked door in the Ramsey residence. 2 basement windows were also left open, so Christmas light cables could be brought in from outside. An additional basement window was broken before the murder of JonBenet, which would have allowed entry into the Ramsey residence. Access to this window has since been debunked. Reason 5. In the months preceding the murder, there were over 100 burglaries in the Ramseys' neighborhood and a staggering 38 registered sex offenders living within a 2-mile radius of the Ramseys' home.
Jeez.
Due to JonBenet's greater visibility as a contestant in a child beauty pageant, some believe she was more susceptible to pedophilic abduction by a stranger. Reason 6. There were no traces of blood discovered in the Ramsey residence. This shows that JonBenet was likely already deceased or close to death when the head trauma was administered. This disproves the notion that strangulation was used as a cover-up after Burke lashed out and mortally struck his sister in the head. The first of the 2 methods used was strangulation. Reason 7. The mind hunter himself, John Douglas, consulted with the Ramsey family and wrote that he is convinced they are blameless. There are few individuals in the true crime sphere whose opinion carries as much weight as Douglas's. John Douglas's theory about what happened to JonBenet, based on decades of profiling, goes as follows. JonBenet Ramsey's killer was a white male, relatively young, who had a personal grudge against John Ramsey and intended to carry it out by defiling and robbing him of the most valuable thing in the world to him. He entered the house while the family was out, either through the basement or with one of the many unaccounted-for keys to the Ramsey home, carrying with him a stun gun, a roll of duct tape, and a spool of cord. His intention was to incapacitate her, abduct her, and molest her. The ransom demand was an afterthought and could explain why it was written on materials found in the home. He had no intention on collecting such a low sum. He was just trying to make a point, and possibly cast suspicion on the Ramseys. It's also possible he had already written a shorter and more succinct ransom note, but that given the amount of time he had to himself, wrote a longer one. He went up to JonBenet's room, incapacitated her with an air taser stun gun, which would not have made much noise, taped her mouth shut, and then took her downstairs. He began strangling her either during or right after the molestation, and whether he meant to or not, caused her death. When he realized what he had done, he finished the job with a quick blow to the head, and instead of taking her, he fled the house in a panic. Who are the known suspects if Douglas's and others' assertions are right about a home intruder? Gary Oliver. Gary Oliver, 32, was a known sexual offender living in Boulder, Colorado, when JonBenet was discovered strangled to death in what appeared to be a possible sexual assault. In 2000, when he was arrested on narcotics charges, police allegedly discovered a magazine cutout of JonBenet Ramsey in his backpack. He was released, but suspicions persisted. Ollie Gray, a private investigator for the Ramsey family, once referred to Oliver's connections to JonBenet as a bombshell arrest and criticized the Boulder PD for not considering him a more credible suspect. Soon after, Oliver's high school friend Michael Vale supported Gray's suspicion with an allegation. Vale alleged that shortly after the murder, a distraught Oliver called his long-standing friend and confessed that he had hurt a little girl. "I hurt a little girl." Vale also told a magazine reporter that he was disturbed by the similarity between the knots used to construct the garrote that strangled JonBenet and those used in an incident where Oliver tried to strangle his mother with a telephone cord.
Now, they said before that there was traces of blood in her underwear.
Yeah.
Why did they not test
DNA? Why did they not DNA test him?
Yeah. Surely that would match up if that's the case. And they said it was 2 different types of blood.
So it was 2 different people, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So it's 2 different people who didn't belong in the JonBenet Ramsey family or in the Ramsey family.
Yeah.
But yeah, you would think if anyone's been arrested under suspicion, take DNA and do the DNA check on it. Yeah.
Oliver was also rumoured to have ties to a theory that connects the markings discovered on JonBenet's body to a stun gun encounter. At the time of his initial arrest, Oliver had a stun gun in his possession. While he was exonerated by DNA testing for the murder of JonBenet, he was later charged with 2 counts of child sexual exploitation for possessing child pornography. Michael Helgoth. According to Ollie Gray, another possible suspect was an electrician named Michael Helgoth, who worked at a nearby auto salvage yard. Gray referred to Helgoth as a hellraiser involved with a purported Ramsey family property dispute. Could this have been a potential motive for seeking vengeance against the family and kidnapping JonBenet, as John Douglas alluded to in his profile? It has been theorized that when 26-year-old Helgoth learned that he could be a suspect in the case, and officials discovered a boot print that resembled his near the Ramsey residence, he committed before authorities could reach him. His death occurred 2 days after the Boulder DA announced a new suspect at a press conference in 1997. Helgoth has apparently been exonerated by inconclusive DNA evidence. John Mark Kerr. In 2006, a former school teacher named John Mark Kerr confessed in graphic, explicit detail to strangling JonBenet in 1996. After facing child pornography allegations in the US, Kerr was apprehended in Thailand, where he was living as a fugitive. The now 58-year-old initially inserted himself into the case by emailing Michael Tracy, a professor at the University of Colorado Boulder, who was producing a documentary on the case. Once the emails took a disquieting turn, exposing the adult man's sexual fixation with JonBenet, Tracy reported Kerr to the Bangkok police, who detained him as a potential suspect. His DNA did not match the profile of an unknown male discovered on the waistline of JonBenet's long johns, and he was ultimately cleared after being transported to Boulder for questioning. Kerr's delusional confession included several diary entries purportedly penned at the crime scene. In one dramatic account, Kerr recalls strangling JonBenet during a failed love game. Kerr's alleged involvement made international headlines, and his insistence that he murdered her was sufficient enough to spark a media frenzy. However, he was ultimately disregarded as a suspect and dismissed as a pedophile seeking notoriety and fame. According to a report, the former suspect lives in the Pacific Northwest under a new name and gender. Despite all the confessions, clues, and conspiracy theories, authorities are no closer to solving this case in 2023 than in 1996. Decades after the murder, the question remains: who murdered JonBenet Ramsey? Time will tell if we ever receive a definitive answer. For now, the complete truth about JonBenet Ramsey's death tragically died with her.
It's one of the most strange stories I've seen. That nothing like ever returned any kind of evidence that's enough to arrest somebody.
Yeah.
You know, and that guy at the end, he should just be locked up permanent anyway. You know, for he's just the way he looks.
Yeah.
You know, I know you can't do that, but it's one of them where what he's up to, he's a no good.
Yeah.
He's
a
wrong un. He's a wrong un, he is. But yeah, it's one of them cases that there's a few cases that I keep my eye on all the time that have never been resolved, and that's one of them.
Yeah.
And whenever I see a story about it, I always read it, but it's kind of like the same repetitive story that keeps coming out.
Yeah.
You know, like we haven't got anyone, someone's come forward, we reckon it could be this guy. It's a bit like the Madeleine McCann case. We think it's this guy's been linked to it, and at the end of the day, they're no further on.
No.
And it's the same with this, they never seem to be any further on with what they're doing.
Do you think that Madeleine McCann's still alive?
No, not at all.
I do.
No. Well, I've seen evidence suggesting loads of different things. Not evidence, but I've seen suggestions what could have happened, and I've seen different scenarios what could have happened, and it's a bit similar to that. There's a bunch of what people think may have happened, and coming from professionals as well.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. Don't know who's involved, but you've definitely got to look close to home.
It's a big cover up.
You've got to look close to home with some of these cases, I think, and it's. I'm not saying it's the family or anything like that, but you've got to look close to home because it's definitely someone who knows her.
Yeah.
And it's the same with Madeleine McCann. It's definitely someone who knows her, probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a sad story at the end of the day.
It's horrible.
And no one's been done for it in the end. No. But let us know what you think. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.
Cheers.